to another edition of Why Wasn't It Better? I am your host, Patrick Darms.
And your co-host, Anton Paras here.
And a return guest, Peter Baldeo. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back today.
It's always a pleasure. You're approaching double digits appearances, I think, at this point, aren't you?
Wow.
I do believe so. First of all, it's not even about me approaching double digits. It's about you guys having me here double digit times. So I appreciate you for bringing me back.
It's an excellent way to put it.
Try.
This is your first appearance on season 6. We're now in the 6th season of Why Wasn't It Better?
Woo, let's go. Long running.
And it's still spooky season.
It is. This is an episode that will air, I think, the week before Halloween.
Ooh.
This is a film that really should have been released around Halloween, and I'm kind of curious why it wasn't.
There's always spooky films that are releasing in the summer. It happens. It's happening now.
Spooky in name only, because if there's one thing this film isn't, it's scary.
Yeah,
It's
right.
eerie.
Is it?
The first 45 minutes are. It just gets weird.
I have in my notes later on, for every minute of thriller horror elements, we get 10 minutes of Little House on the Prairie.
That's reasonable. But we'll get into the discussion. I have a lot of questions for them because of the cast alone.
Some really quick admin before we get into the film discussion. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever platform, go ahead and press that follow button and drop us a 5-star review. And don't forget, we are also active on the big social media spots, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. If you're really loving the show, you can support us directly by joining our Patreon. So whether you're on your daily commute, relaxing at home, or driving into a nostalgia-fueled trip, make Why Wasn't It Better your ultimate podcast companion. This week's episode is one that I have been looking forward to. It is the 20th anniversary of The Village, and Anton, I'm going to let you intro this for us because I usually do, and I feel guilty about that.
Well, glad to. An Amish-style community lives cut off from the outside world by the woods, in which they believe dangerous creatures exist. They have an uneasy truce with the creatures. If they stay out of the woods, they are left unharmed. When one of the young villagers becomes ill, the boy who loves her ignores the elders of the village to make a bid to the next town to fetch medicine. Released on July 30th, 2004 by Touchstone Pictures, Blinding Edge Pictures, and Scott Rudin Productions. Written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Joaquin Phoenix, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, Adrian Brody, and Brendan Gleeson. With a budget of $60 million, so $98 million adjusted for inflation, and a box office at $256 million, so $420 million adjusted for inflation. So, Pat, why are we talking about The Village today?
I mentioned that it's the 20th anniversary. Speaking of stuff that makes me feel old, I very vividly remember seeing this in theaters. This is a bit relevant because M. Night Shyamalan recently released a film called Trap, which I haven't seen and I won't ever see. But Shyamalan is one of the most successful, most polarizing, and I would maybe say most influential filmmakers of the last quarter century. He burst onto the scene in 1999 with The Sixth Sense. He had a pretty significant impact on Hollywood for a real time. Now, even though the quality of his work may be debatable, he is a household name. He's known for his twist endings. I would say his reputation these days isn't nearly what it was when this film, The Village, was released in 2004. It was technically his 6th film, but it's his 4th film after The Sixth Sense. His first 2 films are indie-related stuff that I've never seen. They didn't get widespread releases. But before I set the table for this, I'm curious, Peter, as this week's guest, why were you excited to come on and talk about The Village?
Wow. So feeling dated, I definitely do remember going to see this movie in the theater, and I very vividly remember the marketing campaign, which is brilliantly done. I'm a big M. Night Shyamalan fan. I know everyone hates him, and as you were giving that description about all of those films, all I can think of is like, wow, this guy's like Eli Manning. And as a Giants fan, I hold on to that, right? I support you, M. Night, and I know you've made a few bad movies, but that's okay. And I love it. I'm a big fan of his movies, even though they kind of suck. That's why.
I don't think you're alone. He does have still to this day, a pretty big following.
I believe it. His newer stuff is getting better, and I will defend this to the viewers later. But you're right, that there was a rough stretch there it was just bad after bad, after worse, after moderately better, but still bad.
But fair to say he had some of the best first impressions in Hollywood that anyone could have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Let's set the table for this. In the timeline leading up to this film's release in 2004, I like the Eli Manning comparison, Pete. If you want to take that professional athlete comparison even further, it's like someone winning Rookie of the Year and then impressing everyone in the process, and then in subsequent seasons never quite living up to the expectations with a few highlights in there, right?
Yeah, reasonably
Because
said.
The
Yeah,
Sixth
very well said.
Sense, that made 600 million plus in 1999, which is an absurd amount of money even now. It got nominated for a bunch of Oscars, including Best Picture. He follows that up the following year with Unbreakable, which was financially successful, but it got
Wow,
mixed reviews.
what a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, it has its fans. I don't think it's a bad
You're
movie. I
right,
think
though.
it's okay.
Agreed. That's
Safe to
exactly
say
what I
it's,
felt about.
but safe to say it's not even close to The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, guaranteed. That I can see.
2002, we get Signs, which was a huge success. If Unbreakable was a sophomore slump, Signs was a rebound. He was back on track. I really like Signs, even though it has some
Yeah.
silly water-related stuff in it that you could nitpick. But I really do like that movie, and that made over $400 million. And I think even to this day, it's still generally very well regarded.
Yeah. Everyone remembers that epic scene, right? The first time you
Oh,
see
yeah.
the alien.
Oh yeah, it's a spooky movie.
It's
It's a
got
good
some
one.
great scares in it.
Yeah.
And then we get to this film. The hype for this was huge. And it's difficult now, I think, 20 years later, to explain just how big the anticipation was for this film. Shyamalan was probably, I would say, at the height of his popularity in the run up to this film's release. I still remember seeing the trailer. Talk about a banger.
Oh, it is a masterpiece.
It's
Yeah.
a great movie trailer. It didn't give anything away, unlike a lot of trailers, right? The concept for this movie, from what we know, Pete, you mentioned the marketing campaign. You talk about horror movie gold. I was extremely excited to see this. So were all of my friends. We went to see this opening weekend. I expected it to be great. I remember being excited by the cast as well. And even you look at it even now on paper, you're like, it's a great group of actors.
Rockstar cast.
Really, it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to sleep on the marketing campaign that you mentioned, though, Pete, because
So
they were
well
really
done.
clever about it. I have the movie poster stuff written down here. Let the bad color not be seen. It attracts them. Never
Love it.
enter the woods, for that is where they wait. Heed the warning bell, for they are coming. Very memorable.
And this was all done in where social media, we weren't in the age of social media yet,
Right.
which I
Right.
think holds a lot more clout.
Definitely.
And
This was before social media, but I do recall the internet being a big part of this.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a big part too, at this point, M. Night still had the title of King of the Twist. And so that added to it. A lot of people were hyped up for this.
Anton, did you see this in the theater?
Oh yeah. I was very big fan of Sixth Sense. I saw that originally on VHS.
Let's
saw signs.
go.
Saw signs in theaters. Very hyped up for this, and I remember having very vivid discussions around, hey, like this is like I wonder what the twist is going to be, and we're going to talk about the twist in this movie.
It all sounded awesome on paper, and we had no reason to suspect anything other than a great film.
We had no idea
Ev-
it would be the largest fraud
Everyone
in
I
history.
know, including myself, hated it when we saw it. We all walked out of that movie borderline disgusted, pissed off, confused. Some people were laughing, which we'll talk about some of the stuff we were laughing at.
It was cathartic to have Scary Movie 4 make fun of this movie.
Very much so. They did a
Yeah.
great job with it.
Yeah, I appreciated the one character that you take off the mask and then it's just Pig-Faced Joe, which is the monster's face. I was like, oh, that's so good. But I had to think more just to kind of backtrack a little bit. I thought more about the sports analogy and sports athlete comparison. Do we see a little bit of maybe Tyreek Evans in M. Night?
Refresh my memory.
Yeah.
He was a star point guard on the Sacramento Kings for 1 year. Okay, maybe an East Coast comparison that's actually more in the pop culture zeitgeist. Jeremy Lin
Maybe.
Jeremy Lin-
goes off
that was the
and
dude
that
wins
plays for the
season.
Knicks,
Just
right?
goes off.
Yeah,
And then he just
he
kinda fizzled out.
Linsanity was definitely on the Knicks. I mean, I don't know because I don't know if it's a good enough one. Because think how monumental The Sixth Sense was. That was a cultural phenomenon. I had James Rodriguez as mine.
Okay.
Ooh.
That was my comparison.
Okay. Fernando Torres. In
I
international
mean,
play.
Torres got hurt,
I know.
but James Rodriguez burst through at the 2014 World Cup. He got a couple really nice contracts based on that. He dined on that, but never repeated it. I don't know. I don't know.
By the way, shout out. First day of La Liga today. Soccer season kickoff.
That's right. We got Premier League Friday.
Yeah. Bundesliga Saturday. It's going to be a good year,
That'll give
boys.
the listeners an idea of when we're recording this. It's in August.
Yeah. Bundesliga already started 2 months ago. Great to see Manchester City lose.
They won the Community Shield, didn't they?
I know.
Well, it'll be nice to see them lose when they get relegated or a points deduction for all the financial doping they're doing. But we don't. I don't want to get sidetracked. I think 20 years later, The Village does have fans. There are people that defend this film, like yourself, Peter.
Let's be very clear. Defending this film, I will be not. Making a light stand, I will be.
You're like, I may step aside like a matador.
Let's be very clear. I will present the things that I think, and I will not give much pushback.
Yeah, point is, this, of any film that we've covered on this podcast, Anton, this has one of the most extreme hype to results ratios I think we've come across.
Yeah, I mean, talk about on the rise, talk about really rising star, and, well, bit of a spoiler, but kind of a fizzle.
Yeah, I mean, I'll spoil my opinion now. I think this movie sucks.
A-. Kidding. Not at all.
I mean, hey, we won't fight you on it. If you like it, you like it. Safe to say, Shyamalan's career never really recovered completely after this. Financially, his films continued to do okay for a little while, but his reputation took a big hit after this. He followed this up with a string of duds. Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, After Earth.
Oh, God.
You could make a case that all four of them are some of the worst movies ever made.
The Happening.
It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Lot of promise. And then the trees. If you look at it like an allegory for climate change, it actually kind of works. No, it doesn't. I know. It's a bad defense.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Listen,
know
if
about
the glove
that.
doesn't fit, you must have quit.
No. I mean, I'll say it now. The Last Airbender is the worst movie I've ever seen.
I don't think I ever saw it, particularly for that reason.
Don't watch it.
No reason to waste your time.
It's an embarrassing film, and it's one of those movies that, Pat, you'd probably say, whoa, someone should go to movie jail.
Yeah. Oh, I put Shyamalan in movie jail after that. I walked out of that movie. I never even bothered seeing After Earth. I never will. I know that it's one of the worst movies ever made without seeing it. I don't need to see it.
I heard it was terrible. I never saw it
There's
either.
no reason. What's the point? I retired from his films after Last Airbender. I'm like, I think I'm good here. Now, Peter, I know you're a firm believer that he's turned things around lately.
Yes. I think he was in jail. He's definitely out on parole now. I think his return was The Visit, dude. I saw The Visit in the theater, and I loved it. I thought it was an awesome movie. The twist was great, and I was like, M. Night is back, baby. And then he did Old, which went straight to HBO, and then a movie I stumbled upon called Knock at the Cabin. And he's back, baby.
Have you seen his newest one, Trap?
Not yet. I actually looked at it yesterday, and since we have a kid now, we try to wait for the movies to come streaming, because in case there's an interruption, we can pause the movie and we have 2 days to watch it. But I will be seeing it, and I'll most likely be paying to see it, because I love M. Night. And I think the premise of it's pretty cool. It's also good to see Josh Hartnett back in action. You haven't seen him in a while.
I was pretty lukewarm on him, but...
Dude, Dawson's Creek, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
who
it's
could forget his star-making turn in Pearl Harbor?
Ooh, or it's a Nepo
Dawson's
baby
Creek.
film. You know that, right, Pete?
What?
It's a Nepo baby film.
No, I didn't know that, but now I do.
Yeah. M. Night's basically it's a vehicle for M. Night's daughter to have a starring role in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. No, I know that because she's the star. I noticed that the other day, and I was like, huh, his daughter's a star actress. And I was like, yeah, you know what, man? What wouldn't you do for your kids?
Well, he's
Right.
self-financing his films at this point, so...
That's even better. So you can go make movies with your daughter, give her all you want, and you can pay for it yourself. Who's he bothering?
More power to him.
Yeah.
More power to him.
He made
Right,
good
he's
money off this film.
Yeah, he
Speaking
did.
of this film, I think we can get into the production history because
Sure.
I am mindful of the time, Peter.
Appreciate you for keeping us on track.
Of course, it's why I'm here. So there's not a ton of information when it comes to this film's production, although friend of the show Garrett was kind enough to send us the budget breakdown of this film, which is fairly interesting. The original title was The Woods, but the name was changed because a film in production already had that title. Shyamalan wrote the character of Lucius specifically for Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, so he always hated Joaquin Phoenix then.
It's not Joaquin's best work. Like any other Shyamalan productions, the film had high levels of secrecy surrounding it to protect the expected twist ending that became his trademark. Despite the intense security, a copy of the screenplay was leaked a year before the film's release, leading to much speculation about the film's plot online. I actually don't remember reading about that at the time. I feel like it's something I would have been snooping into, but
And leaked and later downloaded on Kazaa.
Kazaa.
They did end up slightly changing the film's ending because of that leak. Artist Andrew Wyeth's works were used as an inspiration for the visual style of the film. Now, the village set in the film was built in its entirety on one field outside Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. An adjacent field contained an on-location temporary soundstage. Kirsten Dunst was originally cast as Ivy, but she dropped out in order to do Cameron Crowe's Elizabethtown. I don't know who won on that. So she was replaced by Bryce Dallas Howard. Both of them would later appear together in the 2007 war crime called Spider-Man 3.
Ouch.
Here's the good part.
Ashton Kutcher was originally cast as Noah, but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts.
AKA, dude, where's my car?
The role ended up going to Adrian Brody. I don't think Ashton would have had to act as much in the role. Just needed to be himself if it would have been Ashton in the role.
It's a masterful move on Kutcher's part not to be in this.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Talk about dodging a bullet.
It was the Simple Jack character.
This is absolutely Simple Jack.
It was an interesting choice, but to
Simple
continue.
Jack. Oh, yeah, man. You went all out on that one.
Yeah. Radio, I think, is probably one of the most embarrassing examples as well.
That was a Disney movie, right?
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, CBJ, baby.
Yeah.
There was another one
I
where
Am
it's like-
Sam. That was pretty bad.
I Am Sam was...
Oh, that was with
Sean
Dustin
Penn.
Hoffman? No,
Sean
Sean Penn.
Penn. No, you're thinking of Rain Man, which was
Yeah.
good. Also,
Yeah.
also covered in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
They touch on that.
Yeah, but Shyamalan put the entire cast through a 19th century, quote, boot camp in order for them to get a good feel for the time period. Man, that budget breakdown.
Yeah, do you have any highlights you want to go over?
I think one of the things that I want to really highlight for folks is Bryce Dallas Howard feels like the star of the movie. Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And she got paid dirt for the film.
150
pay her?
grand.
Who got paid the
150
most?
grand.
Of the cast?
Of the cast, I'm pretty sure it was Joaquin with like
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, 5 million. Shyamalan made the most amount of money from it, obviously, but
But yeah,
Cameo.
Bryce-
The Stan Lee
Bry-
cameo.
but Bryce Dallas Howard only earned like 150K.
yeah, her first movie.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Now, speaking of Nepo babies that I think we're all happy with, Bryce Dallas Howard is a great example.
Yeah, Ron Howard's daughter. I mean, it's Hollywood. Everyone.
Yeah, this is how
getting
we're
their
not
start.
singling her out. This is
Yeah.
how Hollywood works. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Martin Sheen, Charlie Sheen,
Carlos
Ange-
Estevez,
Angelina Jolie, John Voight.
right?
Alec Baldwin.
His
Maybe not
his
Alec
less successful brothers.
Baldwin. Other Baldwin.
Oh, this
Mark
is a
and
fun,
Donnie.
This is a fun game. Who else?
Oh, there's tons of examples.
Jack Quaid, Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, the Houstons, Warren Beatty, and Shirley MacLaine. We could sit
Yeah.
here all day talking about this. I mean, there's too many examples.
That's true. Scarlett Johansson, Kat Dennings.
Are they related?
Yeah, they are. They're cousins.
Huh? Who knew? I just
But-
learned this recently. Did you know that Stevie Wonder was Michael Jackson's cousin?
Yeah.
I went
Fun
my
fact, right?
entire life without knowing
Wait.
it. I don't know how.
Really?
Yeah, I just learned that the other day on Instagram. Just blown away.
Huh.
And
Wow.
and Samuel L. Jackson is related to the Jackson family.
I did not know that.
How many? Like how many degrees?
Cousin. It has to be real because Janet Jackson said this herself in an interview. So like, I mean, I guess I would believe her, right?
Yeah. Seems.
The one
Checks
that
out.
always the one that got me was Quincy Jones and
Rashida?
Rashida.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not see that one coming when I watched The Office.
Not related to movies, but Vince Carter and Anton, do you know who?
Same sport.
Yeah, same sport, same era.
Oh man.
One of the best scorers of his entire era. Honestly, one of the best players of his era.
Vince Carter AI.
No.
No.
T-Mac.
Allen Iverson.
T-Mac. Okay,
T-Mac.
right. T-Mac.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one last one. Football. Antonio Brown and
The Steelers.
Uh, is it another
Hollywood Brown.
Hollywood? There's someone named
Oh, Marquise
Hollywood.
Brown. Yeah, they're cousins. They are
Yep.
cousins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just got hurt though.
So just to jump back in, filming began in August 2003 with delays because some scenes needing fall foliage could not be shot because of a late fall season. Massive winter storms caused some delays in filming. Principal photography was wrapped by mid-December of that year, and reshoots took place in April and May of 2004. Shyamalan initially had a different concept for the, quote, those who we do not speak of, end quote, creatures. They were originally
Voldemort.
they were originally conceived to be monsters similar to the rock drawings featured in the movie trailers, similar to lions walking on their hind feet, complete with shaggy manes. When the creatures were built to full scale and brought on set, Shyamalan felt that the design was completely unbelievable. The creatures were quickly redesigned, most notably with the addition of the red cloak. And this has a 44% Rotten Tomato score and had a strong opening weekend, but quickly and understandably dropped off. It ended up turning a nice profit, but earned considerably less than Signs. And that is the production history for The Village.
Before we just get into the discussion, we will take a quick break as we hear from one of our sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. All right, it's time to talk why wasn't it better for The Village. Number one reason, false advertising. Earlier, we talked about how awesome the trailer was and how really unique and promising the marketing for this film was. This is one of the most egregious uses of false advertising I can think of in a film. It should be studied as an example of poor marketing. They sold it as a horror movie. It's not. It's a period drama with some romantic elements. While it does have some intense moments, they are few and far between. This has the pacing of a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, like you said, there was so much hype with that trailer, and it's actually a really good example of great pacing for a trailer, and trailers not revealing much. I feel like trailers nowadays, there's too much being given away, but this actually was, you almost get the best cut of the film is the trailer.
I feel like you don't even need to watch the movie after watching the trailer. He should have just left it, and he should have kept the title "The Woods" and then just never explained it.
I think this alone does make the film a failure. We were promised horror. We expected horror. It didn't give us horror.
He wanted to be horror, and then he decided to crash the car for some
It
reason.
let's kind of look at some examples in the film of where there's maybe eerie horror elements, but never anything that kind of has the same payoff of horror.
It's like
Like,
suspense, I guess.
there's-
Suspense and
there's some-
psychological horror.
There's some suspense, right? There's like some eerie elements, whether it's trying to build tension of like the fear of those who must not be named, or scenes where we get like the poor like skinned creatures, the dogs. That's so sad.
Yeah.
There was actually something I wrote down regarding the cinematography.
Mhm.
Even though the movie kind of sucked, I was looking at the way he kind of shot it, right? Because I feel like you needed to consider that. There was a scene where I think it was right after Judy Greer got told off by Joaquin.
Ugh.
She's talking to, I think, William Hurt in front of the house, and the camera is just focused on them as they're having a conversation. So they're in the center of the frame. She's like jumping up and down, and it's a big shot in the back, and you still see like people eerily like walking by in the background. And I thought it was pretty cool because it just creates this feeling of unease. You still don't know what it is, you don't know where you're going, but it's these people living on essentially, I guess, like pilgrims. And something is building and it's uneasy. It's the beginning of the movie where it's starting to build this tension. I get it, right? That's where that suspension's going. And you're waiting for something cool to happen.
It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the cinematography for the film actually looks like it was behind the eye, like behind the lens of a legend, because kind of was, right?
Oh, yeah.
Roger Deakins is the director of photography here. I mean, we've talked about him before. So many films, like we talked about Skyfall on the show. But this is the guy behind Blade Runner 2049, Beautiful Mind. And you can see
Sicario.
that Yep, Sicario. You see that
Mm.
touch in the film, but what you don't get is the depth of the story to kind of back up the eeriness that we see. So it ends up, I feel like, kind of falling hollow and
Agreed.
slow because you have these establishing shots or eerie settings, but it doesn't actually lead to anything.
It makes you want to believe, and then when you actually find out, it's like that Hey Arnold episode where they were always scared of the monster and then they saw the zipper.
Yeah, that's true. A contemporary film that I feel like captured perfectly the eeriness of the time period and also at the same time just looks gorgeous was The Witch by Robert Eggers.
I thought that's what you were going to say. I
Yeah,
was like, I
that's a
wonder if he's going
great
to say The Witch.
example.
Yeah,
It's
very, very good movie.
and that is a film that really understands like true horror elements, building up escalation, and also had a really small budget. So I feel like even just in that comparison, you really just didn't get a horror film here.
There's moments, the guard tower moment when you get like a real jump scare. You get a couple of shots in the woods that are, I would say, horror-ish. But I wrote down Shyamalan made a film that spends almost an hour pretending to be a horror movie.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
The trailer made it look terrifying. And I don't want to pin it all on the trailer because trailers and marketing are not representative of a filmmaker's vision.
I think it was more of a fear of the unknown, right? And that was the best way to get people into theaters. Provide them with something that they want to figure out and lead them to something that they see after the trailer to say, oh, I wonder what it is. It doesn't matter. We're going to go see it and find out.
I feel like, though, what kind of takes away, or when I think about a good horror movie, or even just what this film was horror elements within a period piece that end up being exposition dumps that take away any of the actual momentum that you would want and expect out of a horror film. Whether it's things leading to nowhere, your main character getting kind of taken out without any real kind of cathartic closure for Joaquin Phoenix's character. I feel like any way that you kind of spin it, there really wasn't a conventional, again, it's not a conventional horror film by any means, and it really shouldn't have been sold like that.
And yet, still very appropriate for us to be covering for October.
Right.
Spooky.
Defenders of this film will tell you it's not a horror movie and M. Night Shyamalan isn't to blame for the marketing. I call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
He knew
I
what he
agree.
was doing. At a Comic-Con interview, Shyamalan stated his biggest regret about this film was that he had wished that he had marketed it differently. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, and to those people defending it, I say, look, I know Adrian Brody, you really loved your role in this film.
Ugh. I mean, look, if you like the film, you like it, right? This is obvious. All this stuff is obviously subjective. But I think when you're assessing movies like this, how a movie is sold to you and what the expectations are for a movie, they do matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the most important thing. And like I said, trailers and marketing, they are not representative of a filmmaker's vision because there are many examples where a filmmaker does not have control or any input on how their films are marketed.
Yeah, the film feels a lot more, if the film was maybe marketed more towards the psychological side of it, it feels more like a film about family and trauma. I don't know how to properly market something like that into a proper YouTube movie trailer these days.
I feel like you could have even just called it The Woods.
They were going to, but they had to change it because another film had that title. I've never even heard of that film, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
I feel like you could have called it The Woods and left the ending open, and it would have been a better
just wait
movie.
till we get to the ending.
Okay,
Look,
okay.
we haven't even started dunking on this yet because this is going to get worse. And I think it might be worth giving a disclaimer, Anton. Like, if you love this film and you're a fan of this film, you're going to want to shut this off right now.
Yeah, because
think that's
there's
reasonable.
there are too many flaws to just overlook.
Look, before we really get into it, I do want to highlight some stuff that I liked. I think if you want to talk about the cast, apart from Adrian Brody as Simple Jack, I think it's a well-acted film.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it earlier. So many great actors in this film.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix.
Even Simple Jack.
Adrian Brody is a great actor.
He's a great actor.
I think he's terrible here, but I do think he's a great actor. Joaquin Phoenix is one of the best actors of his generation.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I don't think, one of his best roles. He's doing his socially awkward man of few words routine. I think he's fine here. It doesn't help that he gets shivved by Simple Jack and he's out cold for the second half of the film.
Just interesting decision there on the writing. I think, quick like me armchair directing or like armchair writing, I think he was the most he was a very compelling character that I think could have brought the story forward to like kind of maybe bring the folks in the village out of their shell to confront their traumas head on and to confront their fears head on, which I feel like everything was a metaphor for.
I mean, you get a little snippet of that when he's confronting his mom, played by Sigourney Weaver, about, you know, the box in her house where
Mhm.
she keeps all of her quote unquote secrets. And he's like, I know all the other elders have boxes too. But you're right, Anton. They don't really address that much.
They don't. And I feel like if there was a message that they were trying to tell in the film, like any good story or good film, I feel like there should be follow through or just kind of a cohesiveness in the story. And when you kind of have like that trajectory where you feel like the character like Joaquin Phoenix is kind of bringing it forward, having him sidelined like that, totally jarring.
Because he's really not the hero of the film. The hero of the film is Bryce Dallas Howard. Yeah. What's her character's
And
name?
not
Abigail?
Ivy.
Is there an Abigail in this film?
I don't.
Nope. All right,
I-
scratch that.
I don't
It
think so.
sounds like a name of someone
Yeah.
that would be
Sounds
in that
like a
village.
19th century
Right.
name, though.
Right, okay. Yeah, Ivy. I think she does incredibly well in what is her debut role. This is a great performance from her.
Absolutely. I mean, also I'm a big Brendan Gleeson fan.
He's
John
great.
Hurt
And
guy, dude.
I think he's on screen for 5 minutes, but he's great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big William Hurt fan.
Yeah, it's such an
Thunderbolt
iconic
Ross.
voice, dude.
Professor Hobby?
Yeah.
Oh, is that not the film you were thinking of, Anton?
Go back to our previous episodes, listeners.
Yeah, AI artificial intelligence, in case you're curious. No, William Hurt, he's one of those guys who I've never seen him give a bad performance. Sigourney Weaver, pretty much the same. She's always good. She's good here.
Yeah, the sheer talent in this movie was insane. But I guess
Yeah.
also they were still establishing their careers. It was 2004, so this was 20 years ago, right?
Some
I
of them
mean,
were. I
No,
mean,
William
Sigourney.
Hurt
I
at
think
that
Sigourney
point
was
had-
famous. William Hurt was famous. Joaquin
he
was.
was
He just come
a
off
relative
Gladiator, though.
newcomer. He was
Right,
a relative
Gladiator
newcomer.
was 2001. Bryce Dallas Howard, brand new. Adrian Brody. Oh, he
He
did
had
the
gotten
Academy
an
pianist.
Award
Oscar.
winner.
Yeah,
Yeah, really, Adrian Brody. I mean, geez. Yeah, this was his follow-up to his Oscar-winning performance in The Pianist.
Judy Greer.
Pam from Archer.
Cheryl.
Cheryl, sorry.
Uh,
Yeah.
Hello, Cheryl.
Her character from Arrested Development is
Kitty Sanchez?
hilarious.
Kitty Sanchez.
Kitty Sanchez.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not great here.
Nope, not great.
Some of the scenes are so poorly written and acted they feel like parody. Like the scene where she is trying to tell Lucius that she loves him. She's like, I love you, I love you, I love you to the moon and the sun or one. It's like, what is this writing?
Yeah, it didn't feel grounded in reality. Is that fair?
Yeah, if you
It just
showed
felt
me that
silly.
scene with no context, I would have thought it was a Saturday Night Live sketch.
It just felt silly.
Shyamalan's, he's not the best at dialogue, I'd say. It felt like he was trying to write Puritan dialogue here, and it just failed miserably.
Yeah, and I think like that's a really good point. I feel like part of the believability, the aesthetic itself, I think like one could argue, yeah, period pieces, the clothing's there is an eeriness to it, being in what is this, New England, but
Pennsylvania.
right, Pennsylvania Dutch. But I feel like when it comes to the dialogue, that is very jarring, just because it's so inconsistent.
I don't want to let up on Adrian Brody because I feel like we've been kind to him relatively so far.
There's the inconsistent part.
I wonder, did this temporarily derail his career? Because this is such an outrageously bad performance. This is like Louise Fletcher following up her Oscar win for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Exorcist 2. Just disaster level.
I don't know how he thought that this was going to be good for his career. Basically playing it's not a big part, right?
No.
So then why do it? I mean, like he just falls in a hole.
Was it a
That's it.
spike trap hole? Is that
It's
what
like
it
a
was?
punji pit.
Yeah. They obviously couldn't show that because it's not rated R, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, his crying scene when he's in that pit, it's like, oh, I fast forwarded through it.
Yeah, we all felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
And I do want to highlight once again how promising the premise is for this as a horror movie. I would watch this in a second if it were a real horror movie and we didn't have the fake out. The concept of a solitary village where nobody can leave because there's monsters in the woods, that's a great one.
Yeah, for like a mountain in Colorado or Montana.
Right.
Chadsford, PA. I
Yeah,
know he always likes to do PA stuff, but like you could have aimed for Colorado,
Especially with a
Montana.
no-fly zone.
Yeah, nuts. Over
I
here?
got
Yeah.
questions about that later.
We live in the Northeast, dude. Post
Yeah.
9/11?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're not flying planes around you because you pay for it, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because while the fake out itself is really dumb, I think about like kind of the convention of what the monsters represent, and if the monsters were real, how would that play differently as a film? And I feel like you still get the same message and it's still terrifying. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad move to leave them in as monsters.
The problem is, while some of the horror elements are well done, when you already have seen the movie and you know the twist, you just it's like letting the air out of a balloon. You it just doesn't have the same impact as when you're watching it when you don't know. It's reliant on the twist or not knowing the twist in this case.
Yeah, and let's compare it to a film that had a great twist, but watching it more and more actually kind of rewards the viewer. And I feel like Sixth Sense is a very complete film in that,
Yeah.
because you get a lot of hints throughout the film of Bruce Willis being a ghost, but when you finally get that payoff in the film,
It's worth it.
it's worth it. It's satisfying, and each rewatch you notice things that you didn't notice before. Except when you watch this film again, you notice things that you wonder why you're watching this film again.
So, question is, and I think partial defense of the film, is a movie ever good when you have the grand reveal of the villain or the monster in the end? I have one example. It's a horror movie. The
I
movie
think there's
Smile.
numerous
Yeah,
examples.
there's a lot of examples. Yeah, Cabin in the Woods is a really fun example.
Primal Fear.
Yeah.
Primal Fear is probably the best example I can think of.
Alien, you could argue, you don't really get a lot of shots of just the alien. They kind of really have to hide it throughout.
Okay. I recant the
Jaws.
statement. Jaws. Under Paris. French
Didn't
Jaws.
see that one.
Worth a watch, dude. Worth a watch. Okay, I guess that's reasonable, because the only reason I ask this is because, and I know this has been done in movies. There was a movie I saw, Leave the World Behind, and it was written up after a book. He leaves the end of the movie open, which I personally don't like. I like closure, but I understand why he did it. And I feel like if they just did that with this movie, if they just stopped 15 minutes before the end and just said, you know what, everyone in the village died, we don't really know, and that's how you could have ended it, you would have had a significantly better movie.
I'm gonna come back to that later.
Okay.
In the second reason.
Okay.
I want to get back real quick. Close out the first reason with just stuff we liked. Anton, you mentioned The Witch earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Forests are just creepy in general.
Yeah.
They're creepy in the daytime. At night, they're downright terrifying. And I think this film does start to capture that. It's starting to tap into that old world, primal wilderness monster stuff that a lot of modern settings can't do. You don't need blood. You don't need gore. You just need vibes. But the problem with this film is it only scratches the surface of this concept. This is something I said earlier. For every minute we get of those creepy forest monster vibes, we get 10 minutes of Little House on the Prairie. And we get characters talking about, we need to go to the towns for the medicines.
Too many antibiotics.
Too many shots of people just sitting around in their kumbaya. And like you said, Little House on the Prairie vibes.
Did we like the creature design of the actual monsters?
No.
Nah, didn't really sell it for me.
I thought they were actually pretty well done in the wide shots where you can't really see them well. And because the first few times you catch glimpses of it, you're not quite sure what they look like. And you're like, that's pretty crazy. They're wearing cloaks. Like, how smart are they? Can they talk? They can negotiate truces. That's crazy.
Is that is that less about, or yeah, is that less of the actual like design versus just usage of color? Because I feel like it was the color that really emphasized kind of the fear. And
well, yeah, I mean, Roger Deakins is doing a lot of heavy lifting in those scenes.
Yeah, and once you actually
definitely earned his
real
paycheck
close.
for sure. And to your point about something we liked in the first half of the movie, he absolutely earned it in the first half of the movie.
Oh yeah, you can totally see the influence of Andrew Wyeth in this film, if you're familiar with his paintings. And then last but certainly not least, James Newton Howard's score is a work of art. It's
Spooky.
absolutely stunning, hanging up in the Louvre. This film has no business having a score this good, and there's a very good reason why he received an Academy Award nomination for his work on this film. This is a magnificent film score.
Yeah, and it just gets wasted on
Crap.
Yeah, crap. But I will admit it does add to the atmosphere. We always talk about like the eeriness, but it really doesn't end up lifting the film to be better than it is at all, which is so unfortunate because it is a really strong score.
I listen to the score just by itself, like on Spotify. That's how much I like it. But I think, Anton, I think unfortunately you're right. Does it elevate the material? I think there's only one scene where I think the score absolutely improves things. That's the scene where there's what you think is an attack on the village, and where Lucius grabs Ivy's hands and it turns into slow motion, and the score completely takes over, and it's really, really awesome.
Yeah,
it was like what
No,
it's
that's
like
a
what they
really-
would play
really good example.
in Best Buy if you were buying a TV. That's it. That's how they would showcase to buy the TV.
Okay.
I was like,
Violins.
I'm in tears.
It's possibly the best scene Shyamalan's ever filmed in his career. You get the combination of the Roger Deakins cinematography, you get the score. At that point, if you're seeing it for the first time, you don't know about the twist, so you think the monsters are real.
True. You have
It's
to place
pretty
yourself
awesome.
in the viewer. Yeah. You're hyped because things are about to pop off.
And that's where the film peaks, unfortunately, because right after that, it gets driven off a cliff, crashes into some rocks, catches on fire, and explodes.
Yep.
Yep.
That's about it.
That brings us to the second reason why this wasn't better: the second half and the twist. One of the biggest second half drop-offs of a film I can think of.
I'm just gonna go back to the Eli Manning thing. Come on. Like, any Giants fans out there, like this is it, right?
I mean, arguably though, Eli Manning
Goat.
saved games in the second half.
He did. He was definitely a second half quarterback, but he was still crap in the first half.
Yeah.
A lot of turnovers in this film.
Whoa, easy. I'll never
Yeah,
forget the year. I think he threw 27 picks. It was the best year of my life. I would literally play fantasy, and any defense that played him, I would pick.
I was-
Pat's in our fantasy league this year. Second year in a
Good
row.
luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go. Returning veteran.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
Shout out to any football fans coming up soon. Giants looking slightly mediocre this year.
I'm still being mindful of the time here.
Oh, back on track. Sorry.
Yeah,
You
we
can
got
edit that
40
out,
minutes to plow through the rest of these notes.
right? We got it. Sorry. It's my ADD. Proceed.
I was trying to jog my memory of seeing this in the theater. I think both of you would agree. By like the 45-minute mark, seeing this for the first time, I was convinced that I was watching greatness. Like, this is really great.
Where's he going to go with this?
Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait. Is it werewolves? Werewolves would be cool.
But once you know the twist, it's pretty boring.
It's pretty cheesy.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. like no joke. The way you see the characters act, the way it move, the way that the scenes follow forward, the way that elders talk to each other. It's just the payoff is just not there. And
It's like everyone that was part of the movie realized the twist at the same time, and they're like, damn, now we have to act the rest of this movie.
In the moment, in 2004, I was getting like Stephen King vibes from the first half. And then what has become a recurring problem with Shyamalan's movies, the twist becomes the entire thing that the film hinges on.
Yeah, that's how he defines himself.
It's the twist for the sake of having a twist.
he's
Got it. I see
it's
why
fair
this
to
is way
say-
more valid for the second point.
Well, I was gonna say it's fair to say M. Night's moved on from that, though. I think that
Yeah.
while he'll always be well known for the twists of his earlier films, I think that you can look at his later works as examples of progressing as a writer and as a director, away from having to have like a massive twist to really sell the film.
It's like he was chasing it, right? It's like what they tell athletes: when you're chasing something, you're frustrated, right? Just go out there and have fun. And it seems like when he actually just tried to make a movie because he liked making movies, everything got better. Like,
Yeah.
that's your story, M. Night. Stick to that. You're good at
But
it.
in this particular film, it was really to use a twist as a crutch, and it ended up breaking that crutch.
Fell flat
it's-
on its face, requiring surgery.
Because this film's plot is a Ponzi scheme. It requires initial investment from the viewer, and the promised payoff, it feels like you're being robbed.
Yeah, except you were actually robbed.
Yeah, there's I think like an even really simple example of like a twist being able to feel more and more captivating, I feel like, is when I think that there's a deeper understanding and meeting when we get the reveal of the twist, and then you kind of go back. I had that Sixth Sense comparison earlier. A really famous example, like, have you guys read Shirley Jackson's The Lottery?
Yeah.
And so the twist there, right, is like the townspeople are really excited or are captivated by this lottery, and knowing our expectations of what a lottery is, you're curious to find out that the winner actually ends up being like stoned to death by the town. Knowing
What?
that, yeah, it's a famous short story with deeper meanings around like societal pressures and anxieties.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though you know the twist, you still feel captivated reading into it and kind of analyzing it deeper and further. The way that it's presented here, the twist kind of deflates from I don't know, just the story in general. And
Just didn't need to do it.
no, you just
They
didn't
could have
need to
just
do it.
just cut the last 15 minutes of the movie out.
Here's the difference between this movie and something like
Or
The Sixth
just
Sense.
fade to black. Just fade to black and do like a white text ending. They all found the villagers dead in Chadsford, Pennsylvania. Their bodies torn to shreds, skinned apart, and they were never seen again. That's it. People would be like, what? But no, you had to go unzip the monsters and boom, now everything was ruined.
I think it's even worse than that. Anton, you mentioned The Sixth Sense. You mentioned something like The Lottery. The Sixth Sense is arguably the greatest twist ending in a film ever, right?
Right.
But if you go back and rewatch it, it feels organic. You can see the little breadcrumbs, the hints that were there the whole time.
Yeah.
And the ending felt organic. This felt like they just wanted to surprise everyone. And the reason why I despise this twist so much is it is entirely reliant on two exposition dumps. The first one from Williams Hurt's character explaining everything to Ivy. And then it's like Shyamalan realized that wasn't even enough information, and he had his own goddamn cameo character, the security guard, give another exposition dump at the end when he's just like, oh yeah, there's this wall and security guards and park rangers, and they bought a no-fly zone, and they're pretending to live in ye olden times. When your entire film is reliant on a twist that is dependent on characters just explaining what's going on, that's clumsy writing.
Yeah, you're right. If you have to be told what you're watching, that's probably a bad sign.
Think about when you find out Bruce Willis is dead at the end of The Sixth Sense. In your mind, it all comes crashing back to you. You're like, holy crap, the whole time.
Yes.
And you're running all the events through your head, and you're like, oh, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It all makes sense. And in this movie, you're like, oh, well, good thing the security guard is there on screen to explain all this stuff.
Good thing M. Night Shyamalan, director,
thanks,
is
M. Night.
here.
And like you said, Pat, it does not sell itself as anything else other than you literally are in a period piece where are monsters running into town, like, I don't know, skinning their dogs and like painting their doors.
Very sad, by the way.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah. And then there was that weird bit. Did you notice when Ivy asks her father who was killing all the animals, and he's like, I don't know which one of the elders was doing it. It's like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, that's a little sus. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sure? Because isn't there only 9 of you? And like, you guys have to talk, right?
Look, we can all agree the concept of the movie was a great one. The village surrounded by woods with monsters in it. So Shyamalan took something that was perfect for a horror movie and took a dump on it. He ruined his own good idea.
Yeah. Great setup, great idea, great intentions, piss poor execution. Or actually, really good execution until he decided to drive the car off the racetrack and just smash it into flames. That's basically what happened.
Pete, the point you made earlier, I agree with. If it had ended a lot sooner, where it was just completely ambiguous about their fate,
People
probably a
loved
more
it.
effective film.
And you have to think in that time too. And granted, this is a Monday morning quarterback situation. During the time where we didn't have social media, this would have been viral. Like everyone would have been talking about it when they walked out of the movie, instead of saying, oh, this was crap. Like, what do you think it is? What do you think it is? They would have messaged him. They would have called him. They would have done everything they could. And he just had to sit there. But no.
And then we get an even worse fake out, right?
Yeah.
Where
bait and switch.
It's the bait and switch where maybe you think the monster is actually real when it confronts Ivy in the woods. But then you're like, oh no, then it cuts back to Simple Jack having broken out of jail. And you're like, oh no, it's just this dimwit in a costume.
It's just Adrian Brody.
But he was making
So
monster
silly.
sounds, which was confusing. Remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was.
But how was he doing that?
why would he do that?
The concept of the village, does that even make sense? If you think about it,
Like,
all the elders are in their 50s, so it's basically one generation removed, right? Like, where are the grandparents? Is
Dead.
that wedding in the beginning? Is that the first wedding ever in the history of the village?
Valid questions. Valid questions.
It's kind of a
also
plot hole.
there weren't that
Like-
many people to enter the village, so how do they prevent, like, incestual bloodlines?
Right.
And like, there's like no dysentery or anything, right? Like no diseases that were around, and like, I guess they think they're in the 19th century, right?
Oh, they definitely do. I mean, Brendan Gleeson's son's funeral is in the beginning of the film,
Mm-hmm.
and did they mention what killed him? Some kind of disease,
remember,
obviously, right? Because
yeah,
he's a kid,
yeah.
he's a child. All right, look, I don't want to sound mean here, but this might sound, is sending the blind girl into the woods like the best idea that you can come up with?
Not probably thought out. It's like, because I'm pretty sure you're like a blind person in the woods is like probably the most dangerous scenario you can run into.
Yeah, there's no paths.
You can
What
totally
else to
see
follow?
M. Night just writing by candlelight in his condo, thinking, "Oh, they're gonna love this shit."
Well,
In Chatsford, PA, as the plane flies over.
so her father, his name's Edward Walker, right? William
Mhm.
Hurt's character.
Edwin,
Yeah.
Edwin or Edward?
Like, why
Irrelevant,
wouldn't he
but
just
Ed.
go get medicine himself?
I don't know.
It's all for the audience's sake, right? Remember, like, his excuse for not going is the oath, but that's some self-restricted nonsense. It's like
Yeah.
they created the oath. There's nothing preventing him. Sending a blind teenager into the woods would 1000% present a bigger threat and a problem for the village. All one of the elders had to do was just slip away for a couple hours, get the antibiotics, and come back. That's it.
No, it's all pretentious writing, right? So Bryce Dallas Howard's character probably represents like an innocence. Being able to not see the outside world just kind of shows that there's kind of no judgment upon like these people that live within the village. So by the elders and the people in the village not breaking out from the village themselves to like go visit the outside world or confront their fears and traumas shows that it really does take someone that there is a courage to Bryce Dallas Howard's character kind of going out and being the one to do that despite not being able to see. So I think it just kind of boils down to pretentious writing.
It was a good description. I feel like it just lacks logic.
There's no logic at all.
It's just,
This is
No,
the even
what?
bigger question. Why would you just not have antibiotics in one of the boxes?
that's what I would pretend. And then just pretend like you were mixing up some mystery water and be like the
Just
medicine
tell them-
water.
They're local mushrooms.
They had medicine in 1897. They didn't have antibiotics yet, but like they had medicine.
They had Louis Pasteur, the
Right.
Pasteur method.
That's right. That's right. They did.
They were picking
Thank
and
you, Louis.
choosing what technologies they had and what science they had.
They had electricity in 1897, but they didn't have it in the village, obviously. It's just amazing to me. They had the financial wherewithal to buy a goddamn no-fly zone, but they didn't think to pack antibiotics.
First of all, how the hell do you even buy a no-fly zone?
You don't. I looked it up on ChatGPT. You can't.
I'm pretty sure you can't do that.
Yeah.
No. Also, even over a quote-unquote no-fly zone, an airliner that's flying 36,000 feet, you can easily, even if it's not flying directly over you, your angle of viewing is going to be pretty large, right?
Of course.
In a wide open field.
It's like
Like
so
how-
you're telling me in the 30 years they've been there, no plane has ever accidentally flown over. No one has ever climbed the wall and wandered in there.
No teenagers have ever done any debauchery whatsoever.
That's what
involving
I
this
was
plot of
curious
land.
about. I don't know if I missed
In
this
The
detail.
middle of nowhere, actually. No teenagers have never committed any crimes.
Did either of you do either of you have a good idea of how big the nature preserve is? I was trying to think about this.
No, it's. I don't
Edward
think that
tells
was really
Ivy
good.
it's like a half day's walk to that path, and then if you follow the path, you'll eventually reach a wall. So I'm thinking half day's journey
7, 8
is like
miles, maybe?
I thought maybe more than like 10 or 15 miles. I don't know, but remember she's blind, so she's going to be slower.
That's messed up.
It's true though. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
be mean, but
No,
like
it's-
if he
it's like
said a
it's
half day's
true.
journey, it's probably going to take her a day.
Yeah, you're right, though. So distance, I would say anywhere distance-wise 5 to 10 miles, which isn't really that far.
It's not
Well,
it's not
what's
that
half
far.
a day? What's half a day hours wise?
I'm thinking 8 hours. And
Yeah,
if you're
okay,
walking
so,
3
alright,
or
10
4
hours.
miles an hour, but
Yeah,
she's
you're probably
slower, right?
So more like I
I think we're overthinking this.
Yeah, but the answer is under 20 miles,
Yeah.
which
Which
isn't
is-
very far.
Square mileage wise, that's big. He must have had a lot
Mhm.
of money. Look, they're LARPing.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Also, how do you buy a no-fly zone after 2001?
You can't.
I mean,
I don't think you could
just-
ever do that.
just like it's Nuts.
No, it does make you feel bad for all the unknowing villagers, right? They're kind of more or less captives.
Prisoners.
Yeah.
But I got this question the other day. Would you rather be someone that knows everything now? Or would you rather just be someone that's just completely ignorant and happy?
That's the question of the toad in the hole.
What's that? I don't
It's
think I've ever
a
heard that.
very it's an old famous tale of like there's like a toad in the hole and the only things it knows is the sunlight coming through, and then it gets visited by another creature that says, oh, the outside world has all these beautiful wonderful things if you escape the hole. And the toad's like, well, I mean, things are good over here. I like the sunlight coming through. What more do I want? So I think it kind of comes down to like, does the ignorance give you bliss, or
Yeah.
knowing that you're knowing as the reader that this is a toad in the hole, that there's a whole world outside for them,
Right.
what is better? So I think it comes down to like philosophical like preference.
That's the theme Shyamalan was going for, right? And that's one of the big questions about the film. It's like, are their lives really better?
That's what he was aiming for.
Well,
That was the question that he was supposed to
I
answer.
suppose so. That's what defenders of this film will tell you.
I mean, that seems like we're grasping.
I think like the takeaway is they're not dealing with their problems in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like they really just need therapy.
They're cowards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand that. If the world is so bad you want to go live and start a cult and live somewhere, that's totally fine. You're entitled to do that.
But what happens, I guess, is like what's happening to all the characters is by doing it the way they are, it ends up hurting their loved ones. It ends up perpetuating kind of this like cycle of lies.
Right. You are entitled to do that, Pete.
Yeah.
But are you entitled to lie to and deceive your children
No.
like that?
You mean imprison people?
Yeah. I would argue no.
You can't imprison people against their will. It's illegal. But listen, if I woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to start a cult. I'm done with this crap. I don't want to deal with banking. I don't want to deal with the world. I'm going to go live in a cult. I can absolutely do that in PA and no one can bother me. And if someone wants to come with me, gladly. But I will not force anyone to stay with me if they don't want to.
I distinctly remember when Ivy goes over the fence, people in the theater were laughing. When the truck's driving up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Did either of you watch one of the deleted scenes where she finds the wind chimes that are making all the creature noises?
I didn't.
No,
I didn't watch
that
the
one.
deleted
Yeah,
scenes.
it's one of the
I
deleted
don't think I don't think it adds anything.
No, it doesn't.
That's why it was deleted.
Probably, yeah. The final ending before it was reshot with the stolen script, that surfaced, a year earlier. She climbs over the wall. She gets help from a truck driver. So it's slightly different than what we see here where she meets the park ranger.
It also, the truck driver is telling her about like the real world.
Yeah, I'm glad they changed it to this because that would have been super awkward.
Very awkward.
Roger Ebert famously hated this film.
Dude, he eviscerated it. I read his review.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm just going to read this snippet from it. Quote, "The Village is a colossal miscalculation, a movie based on a premise that cannot support it, a premise so transparent it would be laughable were the movie not so deadly solemn. To call the ending an anticlimax would be an insult not only to climaxes, but to prefixes. It's a crummy secret about one step up the ladder of narrative originality from It Was All a Dream. It's so witless, in fact, that when we do discover the secret, we want to rewind the film so that we don't know the secret anymore." End quote.
First of all, absolutely accurate. Second of all, fantastic writing, great vocabulary.
There's a reason he's the GOAT.
Yeah. Third of all, yeah, they should have just took the movie out back and shot it.
Before we move on to the next reason, this has to be pointed out. This film has a number of glaring similarities to the young adult novel Running Out of Time by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This book is about a village where the people who live in it think they're living in the 1800s when actually it's set in the present day. The heroine of the book also goes searching for medical supplies, and the village elders take steps to make sure their children never learn the truth from their world. The author threatened to sue the film for plagiarism. M. Night Shyamalan wrote the similarities off as, quote, meritless, end quote.
Meritless.
Yeah.
I think it's a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, that's
suspicious. Super suspicious.
Yeah, pretty much the same story. Anything to add before we move on to the third reason?
No. Oof.
This is not so much a problem with the film as just an overall discussion point, which we very much alluded to earlier. But this was really the turning point for Shyamalan's career. We didn't know it at the time, but things only got worse from here. Now, whether or not you think he rebounded recently, notwithstanding, looking back on it, The Village is the turning point for his career.
It was a rough stretch.
This marked the beginning of one of the all-time worst, most spectacularly awful runs of films by any major filmmaker ever. This is what Shyamalan put out in a row, uninterrupted. The Village, Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, After Earth.
Just horrible, horrible films.
It's
the only
astonishing.
way
It's
to
like watching a train crash in slow motion.
Yeah, The Happening, I got to give some credit to because I thought it was actually. I enjoyed it until the end.
No, I won't
Well,
hear that.
so it's
I
interesting to
enjoyed the
kinda
movie
see.
until the end. It was a
Huh.
great build up. Again, another movie that he could have just faded to black and
That
ended with
movie-
white text.
There was too much of that movie that was just. I just couldn't take it seriously. When the dude was just like laying there getting run over by a lawnmower, I was like,
Lawnmower,
okay.
it was
And he's just
hilarious.
staring blankly at the screen. It was just like, this isn't.
How would you
This doesn't make any sense.
How would you rate that film, Peter? A to F scale.
Happening,
Yeah.
including the ending or not including the ending?
Obviously including the ending. The whole film.
C minus.
That's very generous.
As I say this on every episode, right? I'm always gonna have a lower bar for success for anything that falls into the horror category because it's hard, it's tough, and I've watched a lot of bad movies, but I know the worst horror movie I've ever seen in my life, and it's awful.
What is it?
Tin and Tina. It was a Netflix Spanish horror movie about two twins that were possessed. It was probably the worst movie I've ever seen.
If
I
you
would
look
watch
at
Hannibal over 6 times in one day straight. No bathroom breaks, no snacks, nothing. Before I watched Tin and Tina again, it was
Yeah.
horrendous. It was awful, dude.
So if you look at going back to M. Night, if you look at The Village, Lady in the Water, and The Happening, you still you could argue he's still trying to follow like a very similar formula, right?
Yeah.
Try to tell like a twist film, breaks away from it with The Last Airbender. That's a bit more of like a big budget Hollywood film that's
Big
going to be
IP.
like
Yeah.
like looking for a blockbuster basically. But you can't shake the really just going from, hey, it's like the twist guy to, oh, it's the twist guy, right?
Well, by that point, he was a joke. I mean, he was a punchline by 2010.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The
It was
Happening
like,
was,
oh
I think,
no.
The Happening was pretty much the nail in the coffin. And for me, The Last Airbender was, I'm burying this guy and I never want to see anything he makes again. I walked out of that film in the theater. I walked out of it.
It
Yeah,
would.
the
I've heard.
The Last
I've never
Airbender
seen it.
was. It
It-
felt
it-
like a personal attack to fans of the show.
Like, I should have written a letter to the United Nations, letting them know, like,
It
what
was.
happened.
There were war crimes committed.
Yeah.
This guy needs to be prosecuted at the Hague.
No, and that's why I don't think I've ever really done this with another director, but I was completely out after that film. I will never watch another one of his films again. I will never waste my time. I will never spend. I mean, I did to prepare for this episode, but any of his newest ones, no chance.
Give him
But
a
I-
chance. He's gotten so much
I
better.
won't.
Please.
I won't. I've made my
Okay.
decision.
It's really hard to. It's really hard to. I
Pete,
mean,
I have enough crappy movies to watch for this podcast now. You know, I have to watch Halloween 3.
Pitch this to the listeners. Pitch this to the listeners for the M Night fans out there. If we get them over 1,000 subscribers, what's the number to make
For
you
me to
watch the
actually
movie?
watch a new M. Night film,
To give M Night a shot, a chance, to
I
let him
would-
redeem himself.
I would need a minimum of $200.
okay. How about
Easy.
Done. I like Pete's notion here. If we could get to 2,000 subscribers, would you on our YouTube, for example,
There
would
needs
you
to be an
watch an M. Night
incentive.
Shyamalan film?
This is how you get people engaged. Because if you have diehard M Nighters,
I'll do it. I'll do it for money.
So 2,000 subscribers.
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the number.
Yeah.
All
Let me
right.
call Russia.
Let's make. All right, we're gonna make a reel out of this. We're gonna promote the heck out of it, because let's call it the Get Patrick to Reconcile with M. Night
Yeah,
campaign.
you have to, man.
There's not
Because,
going to be
dude-
a reconciliation. I mean, I'll
Well,
watch.
you
I'll
don't-
watch
it
the
doesn't-
movie, but
Doesn't even need to be a reconciliation. You don't even need to hug. You can give him the Roy Kent head nod, Ted Lasso.
I
That's
still
it.
think he's a con man.
M Night is not. He's not
I'm
spending his own
telling
money.
Pete. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen The Last Airbender, like I have never
It's
felt
true,
that way
though.
about
It
a film
is-
So
before.
I've never
it's
really
just-
seen the show Avatar, so I think that's why I never saw the movie. But I've heard horrendous things
It's
about.
one of my
fans.
favorite
And
shows of all time.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
and it
heard
really
that from a
does
lot of
feel
people, Pat.
personal. It really does feel personal if you love the series and you see what he did with the film.
Devastating.
Do you have anything like that, Pete, where it's just something you absolutely love, just got annihilated in the adaptation, where it just changes how you view things?
Plenty of movies, man. Some of the original Mortal Kombats were devastating.
Honestly, what Peter Jackson did with the Hobbit trilogy was pretty bad.
Make sure
I
we
never
thank Peter
saw. I
Jackson.
never saw the Hobbit trilogy. I saw the Lord of the Rings,
Right.
but I
Completely
read
different.
Oh,
Actually,
absolutely, like night and day.
I think I don't remember the Hobbit. I'm trying to think what else. Gran Turismo, I think was great, which we discussed.
Yeah.
Actually, I take that back. The first Mortal Kombat's, a lot of people hated them. I loved them because I was a huge
Oh, the
Mortal
one from the
Kombat nerd.
90s?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's not a
With
bad
Christopher
movie.
Lambert.
No.
It's not a bad movie.
Um,
My
Christopher
name is
Lambert.
Raiden.
One of the worst actors ever.
So here's one thing I know it's impossible, but it's Scorsese and he's phenomenal. By no means. I love The Wolf of Wall Street. It's one of my favorite movies. I read the book, and the book is so much better that when I saw the movie, I loved the movie, but I felt let down because it's impossible. If you do everything if you cover everything in a movie that you did in the book, the movie would have been 6 hours. It's just you can't
Right.
do it. So I guess I'm just gonna call it the equivalent of first world problems. But that was one of the times I could think about.
Yeah, we saw that together, Pete. I remember that.
Yeah, very good movie. I loved it. Wait,
It's all right.
so long ago.
Yeah, 2012. Point is, yeah, 2,000 subscribers. I'll watch an M. Night film.
All right.
All right.
Well,
What's our current tally right now, Anton?
we're little under 1,000, so that's exciting to say.
Yeah.
So we got to double it.
That's a long. We got to lower the number. That's way
No,
too much.
no, that's
We got
fine.
lofty
2,000's
goals.
fine.
We got lofty goals.
Yep.
But
Aim
I
high.
feel like with lofty goals, we got to give him a good movie.
I like the idea of if we get to 2,000, we'll get Pat to watch an M. Night film.
Okay.
Because
the choices
I
will
think
either be old or Knock at the Cabin.
we'll get there when we get there.
All right. You know what we
Well,
have to do. Let's go.
That's
Why
all
was
I
the
have for the
detonation?
reasons in the notes here, right? The false advertising, the second half, the twist, and how this was really just a turning point for Shyamalan. And, he just went on this awful run. And there's a reason why he's self-financing these days.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Talk about whether or not we liked the film and give our ratings. Peter, as the guest, you always have the option to go first.
I will take that opportunity today. Did we like it? No. But I feel like I'm a gentler judge. I do think the star-studded cast was awesome. I think the cinematography was very eerie. I am a Giants fan, so I understand that sometimes the second half of your game has to go bad, and you still have to take the wins. I give him credit for making an awesome first half of the movie. I thought it was great. The marketing, I think, was definitely not aligned with the movie. In the end, the movie was disappointing for me, and I think he could have achieved a lot more by doing less. And I think he was chasing something that he wanted to chase to try to raise the bar on what he did and what he was known for, and I think he missed dramatically. Overall, I'm going to give it a D-. I am. And yes, this comes right after me talking about The Happening. I give it a D-.
Okay.
So you think The Happening was better than this?
I do. I really enjoyed the premise of The Happening because it was eerie. It was very eerie to
Till
me.
the ending.
But then, okay, the ending got stupid, right? But if you think about it, 90% of that movie was awesome. And that's what, and like, during M. Night, let's call it his bumpy era. I knew walking into every M. Night Shyamalan movie that you were going to get one thing. It's going to look really cool, but it is going to disappoint you in ways that is just going to destroy you worse than your parents not being mad about you, instead just saying they're disappointed.
Pete, like a blind Bryce Dallas Howard, I cannot pretend to climb over a fence and try to find medicines for this town in the same way that I cannot deny that this film is a stinker and The Happening had that horrible ending and we can't deny it.
It did, but
yes.
it was
I thought the whole film
was better
sucked.
than this.
I didn't like any of it.
But relatively speaking, if you only had to pick one and you couldn't gouge your eyes out, that's not appropriate. If you either had to watch The Village or The Happening, which one is it?
Oh, I'd rather watch this.
I
Gun to
wouldn't
my
wanna
head,
watch
I'm picking
either.
this.
Wow,
I
really?
hate this film. Like, you already know.
Oh man,
Okay, you know what? I'd pick this film because I much prefer the cast in this film.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
I don't have to watch
That's
Mark
reasonable.
Wahlberg. Oh, can you believe what's happening?
Oh, hey.
Fresh
Hey,
off
guy
the
getting
Italian
run over
job.
by the lawnmower. How you doing? How's your mother?
All right, fine. My opinions may be unpopular, but I don't know. I'm still sticking to it, man. I like The Happening more than this. I do. I really do.
That's okay.
All right.
Anton, it's your
fine.
turn.
It's fine. Yes. This film is just disappointing. It was such a cathartic experience for me to watch Scary Movie 4 and see the way that the writers were able to just kind of like break down the hilarity of what this film was, because I remember going away from the theaters and just getting this feeling of just deflation because of that horrible reveal at the end that everything you saw was a sham. And it was hard to rewatch it again just because even going through the film, there really is no payoff or no proper storytelling to reward the viewer for this very poor twist at the end. And when we consider how strong the cast was, the impeccable pedigree of the folks involved, including the director M. Night Shyamalan, who, we touched on it again. At the time, the dude was a rising star. So I feel like when you get such a disappointing film, it really did mark a really terrible turn for him. So I have to go ahead and just not spoil or not give a twist and just give it straightforward. This is an F from me. It is just not a fun film to watch, not a film that I ever want to rewatch, and it's just very disappointing.
Damn, that's cold, man.
This film had so much potential going for it. The premise is fantastic. I would love to see a real version made of this film's premise at some point. I don't think we'll ever get that, but I'd like to see it. Highlighting what both of you already said, we have a very solid cast here. Joaquin Phoenix is fine. Bryce Dallas Howard is the standout. Adrian Brody notwithstanding. The production values are top notch. We have gorgeous cinematography, courtesy of Roger Deakins. I mentioned how much I love James Newton Howard's score. The first half is some of the best work Shyamalan's ever done. It was on pace the first time I saw this for being one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. Did I mention how good the premise was? But it's all a giant fake out because it's not a horror movie at all, even though that's what was sold to us. All of the bad things that you hear about this movie are deserved, despite the marketing letting us down. I think this movie stinks because of what happens in the second half. It's silly. It's unnecessary. It's a twist for the sake of a twist. It undoes all of the interesting things that the first half does. And that's precisely what makes it a failure. Shyamalan took his own good ideas and ruined them with very bad ones. I was originally trying to consider with my rating the first half, but I can't do it. This is one of the worst hype to results ratio of its era. It was bad then. It's worse now. Solid F. There's no possibility of me ever rewatching this movie unless it's for money. And there's no possibility of me ever recommending this movie to anybody. If you're a serious Shyamalan fan, you probably find some good in this, but I'm not. And yeah, F.
You know what I just heard? 5,000 subscribers. Pat will watch The Village in IMAX.
If they show it.
Yeah, you'd have to find a very desperate IMAX theater that'll layer it.
I mean, that's the future of movies, right? That's what they're doing now. AMC's showing old movies on a big theater. I saw it the other day and I was like, oh, that's pretty smart.
I love seeing old movies in theaters again.
Same. They're great.
Oh.
Like, you can watch great hits like The Village.
Yeah, I mean, they did Star Trek 3 earlier this year, and I missed it, but I was busy. But yeah, I mean, that's it for The Village.
What a masterpiece.
It's a master something.
What a masterpiece.
Stink bomb. Well, Peter, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Glad to be back, guys. Thanks for having me.
Even the worst films are fun.
Always a pleasure having you.
About. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, now that I think about it, I don't think I actually have. I think Tin and Tina is probably the only F for me. I've seen a lot of bad movies.
Are you challenging me to bring you on for a film that you would give an F to?
I am indeed.
I think that's very easy. There's so many bad films out there.
There are, but if you think about it, Anton, we don't give Fs out often.
You don't.
Yeah.
Even no matter, because the point is, why wasn't it better? There's not many Fs. Why wasn't it better history?
No, we did two last season: Blade Trinity and the Steven Seagal film On Deadly Ground. Both of those got Fs.
On Deadly Ground? F?
Have you seen it recently?
Not recently. Last time I saw it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
It was probably the lens of, action film.
Yeah. But,
all right, I'll watch it again then.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of Why Wasn't It Better? Next week's episode, which is our annual Halloween episode, is going to be Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Ooh.
The only Halloween film not featuring Michael Myers.
Happy Halloween, folks.
Yep. See you then.